My name is Samantha. For 18 years, I have lived in the shadows. Specifically, the shadow of my twin sister Emily. We were born on the same day and share the same face, but our similarities end there. Emily was like the sun, bright, active, loved by everyone. In contrast, I was like the moon, quiet, introverted, always hidden by the sunlight. For our parents, James and Linda Chen, Emily was the perfect daughter. She excelled academically, was active in extracurricular activities, and was social and charismatic. On the other hand, I was the other daughter. Not as smart as Emily, not as social as Emily, not as perfect as Emily. From a young age, I desperately tried to catch my parents' attention. I strived for good grades and even tried sports. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't escape Emily's shadow. "Samantha, why can't you try harder like Emily?" This is a phrase one heard repeatedly. Each time, my heart broke a little more. Emily was my twin sister, but it seemed like we lived in entirely different worlds. Her world was vibrant, filled with friends and admiration. My world was gray, filled with loneliness and yearning. In high school, this difference became even more pronounced. Emily was elected student body president and won numerous awards. Meanwhile, I was in the art club's corner, drawing unnoticed. Drawing was my only escape. On the canvas, I was free. I could create without being compared to anyone, just following my imagination. However, even this talent went unnoticed by my parents. Art. "What are you going to do with that in the future?" my father often said. "Look at Emily. She's going to medical school. That's what a good future looks like." Every time I heard those words, my heart closed off even more. I felt ashamed of not being able to meet my parents' expectations, of not being able to be like Emily. But at the same time, I was angry that they couldn't accept me as I am. My relationship with Emily was complicated. She loved me, that was certain. But she felt our differences too. Sometimes her attempts to comfort me ended up hurting more. Her sympathy seemed to widen the gap between us. "Samantha, it's okay. You have other talents," Emily often said. But behind those words, I always sensed the implied, but not as much as me. In our last year of high school, we graduated at the same time. During the ceremony, Emily gave a speech as the honor student. I sat in the audience, watching our parents proudly gaze at her. At that moment, I felt completely invisible. After the graduation ceremony, my parents threw a grand party for Emily. The house was filled with a celebratory mood, and I locked myself in my room and drew. No one came looking for me. That night, as I lay in bed, I reflected on my 18 years of life, always hidden in Emily's shadow, unable to meet my parents' expectations, struggling to find my own value. And the thought of continuing to live like this squeezed my heart with pain. But in that pain, a determination grew. No more living in someone's shadow. I vowed to live my own life. I didn't know it then, but that decision would dramatically change my life, and it would open the door to a hidden truth about our family. A week after graduation, our lives began to take an unexpected turn. At breakfast, my father suddenly stood up and announced something important. "Everyone, to celebrate Emily's excellent grades, we've decided to take a family trip to Hawaii." Emily cheered, and my mother shed tears of joy. Meanwhile, I just stirred my cereal. "Samantha," my father turned to me. "I'm sorry, but could you stay home and watch the house?" At that moment, time seemed to stop. Emily's cheers and my mother's tears all faded away. All I could hear was my father's words. "House sitting," I managed to say. "Yes," my father answered lightly. "Someone has to look after the house, right? Besides, this is a trip for Emily. You understand, right?" "Understand? What is there to understand? I graduated just like her. I'm also a part of this family." But at that moment, I truly felt like I wasn't really a part of this family. "I understand," I replied in a small voice. No one seemed to notice my turmoil. That evening, as my family packed, I locked myself in my room and faced the canvas. I expressed my anger, sadness, and loneliness with vigorous strokes. There was a knock, and Emily entered my room. "Samantha, are you okay?" Concern tinged her voice. I didn't turn around as I answered, "Yeah, I'm fine. Have fun." Emily hesitated, then said, "I'm sorry. I talked to Dad, but—" "It's okay," I interrupted her. "I'm really fine. Go and enjoy." Emily sighed and left the room. I was glad she had tried to speak to Dad for me. But at the same time, I knew it meant nothing. My presence was just that insignificant in this family. The next morning, as my family left, I stood at the door. My mother hugged me and said, "Take care." My father just patted my shoulder. Emily looked apologetic. After they left, the house suddenly became very quiet. For the first time, I felt truly alone. But at the same time, I felt a strange sense of freedom. That week, I was completely free. For the first 2 days, I locked myself in my room and continued to draw. I forgot meal times, just facing the canvas. On the 3rd day, I went outside for the first time. I walked through the nearby park, looking up at the blue sky. I wondered if the sky in Hawaii was even bluer. On the 4th morning, something unexpected happened. The doorbell rang. I cautiously opened the door. There stood a woman I didn't recognize. But the moment I saw her face, I gasped. She looked like an older version of my mother. "Hello, Samantha," the woman smiled kindly. "I'm your mother's cousin, Caroline." I was speechless. I had never heard of my mother having a cousin. "May I come in?" Caroline asked. I could only nod. As Caroline entered the living room, she looked around. Then, her eyes landed on my paintings on the wall. "These are wonderful," she exclaimed. "Did you draw these?" I nodded shyly. "Yes, it's just a hobby." Caroline looked me straight in the eye. "It's not just a hobby. This is talent, Samantha." Those words deeply moved me. I had never been praised like that by my parents. Caroline began to ask eagerly about my paintings, the techniques, sources of inspiration, and my dreams for the future. Slowly, I opened up and began to share my thoughts. As we talked, I felt enveloped by a strange sensation. Caroline listened to me as if she were a longtime friend. Her eyes shone with understanding and empathy. "Samantha," Caroline said seriously, "you have a great talent. You should have the opportunity to develop it." Saying this, she took a check out of her wallet. "This is for nurturing your talent." Caroline offered the check to me. I was shocked when I saw the amount. $50,000. It was unbelievable. But I stammered, bewildered. "I can't accept this much money." Caroline smiled gently. "Take it. This is an investment in your future. I believe in you." Tears filled my eyes. For the first time in my life, someone recognized my talent and believed in my future. Caroline hugged me and whispered, "You're special, Samantha. Don't forget that." After she left, I stared at the check for a while. This piece of paper might change my life. The thought made my heart race. Yet, I also felt anxious. How would my parents react if they found out? What would Emily think? And why had Caroline suddenly appeared and given me such a large sum of money? Unanswered questions floated in my mind, but one thing was certain: a big change was coming to my life. On the day my family returned from Hawaii, I felt a crushing anxiety. How should I explain Caroline's visit and the check? Was there even a need to explain? The sound of the front door opening and cheerful voices filled the house. Emily was the first to come in, her face sunburned, smiling. "Samantha." "I'm back." She rushed to hug me. I stepped back slightly and just nodded. Emily's face showed a moment of confusion, but she quickly returned to her usual smile. Our parents also came in with their luggage. My mother looked tired, but my father was as dignified as ever. "Samantha, was everything okay at home?" my father asked. "Yes, there were no problems," I replied flatly. "Good," he said, and that was the end of the conversation. My family began unpacking and sharing memories of their trip. I watched from a distance, Seeing their joyful faces, I wondered again if I truly belonged to this family. At dinner time, we sat around the table as if in separate worlds. My parents and Emily chatted excitedly about Hawaii while I ate silently. But the peaceful moment didn't last long. "What's this?" my mother's voice suddenly rose. She had been sorting through a pile of mail on the table and found the check. My heart started pounding. I had completely forgotten about Caroline's check. My father picked up the check and his eyes widened. $50,000? Addressed to Samantha? What is this all about? The atmosphere in the room froze. Emily stared at me in shock, and suspicion appeared in our parents' eyes. I took a deep breath and slowly began to explain. About Caroline's visit, how she had praised my paintings, and how she wanted me to use this check to nurture my talent. After I finished, there was a long silence. It felt very long to me. Suddenly, Emily spoke up. "Isn't that unfair? To receive such a large sum from a stranger while we were away?" I was shocked to see my sister. Jealousy was clear in her eyes. "Emily," I said quietly, "you received the gift of a trip to Hawaii. This is a gift for me." "But it's not just yours," Emily raised her voice. "We're twins, aren't we? We should share everything." I felt anger rising. "Share? You've monopolized everything so far. Our parents' love, attention, and admiration. This time it's mine." "Samantha," my father's voice was sharp. "What's with that attitude? Apologize to Emily." At that moment, something inside me broke. The emotions I had suppressed for years overflowed. Apologize? Me, I stood up, my voice trembling. Who should be apologizing? Who has always disregarded me, cherished only Emily, never recognized my talent, and continued to ignore my existence? My parents stared at me in surprise. Emily looked like she was about to cry. "You all," I continued. "Have you ever truly loved me? Or have you just seen me as Emily's shadow?" My mother started to speak, but I cut her off. "That's enough. I no longer want to be with a family like this." With that, I ran to my room. I closed the door, collapsed on the bed, and my long-held-back tears flowed freely. After a while, there was a knock at the door. It was Emily's voice. "Samantha, can we talk?" I hesitated, but eventually I opened the door. Emily's eyes were also red from crying. "I'm sorry," she said in a small voice. I've been struggling too." I waited silently for her to speak. The expectations of our parents were too heavy. "But I was envious of you. You seem to live so freely." I was surprised by her words. I had never imagined that Emily could feel envious of me. We really didn't understand each other," I murmured. Emily nodded and came closer to me. Then, suddenly she hugged me. "Can't we start over?" she whispered. As real sisters. I hugged her back and quietly nodded. I felt the years of misunderstandings and jealousy wash away with our tears. However, this poignant moment of reconciliation was short-lived. The next day, an even more shocking truth came to light. At breakfast, our father began with a grave look. "Samantha, Emily, there's something I need to tell you." We looked at each other anxiously. "About the woman yesterday." "Caroline," he started, choosing his words carefully. "The truth is, she is your real mother." The air in the room froze. Emily and I stiffened as if struck by lightning. "What? What do you mean?" Emily asked with a trembling voice. Our mother who raised us began to explain through tears. She and Caroline are sisters. Caroline had become pregnant while unmarried when we were conceived, and to protect the family's reputation, they decided to have us adopted. "But why now?" I managed to say. "Caroline was recently diagnosed with a serious illness," she answered. "She wanted you to know the truth." This confession turned our world upside down. Everything we had believed collapsed in an instant. I stood up and staggered out of the room. Emily followed me. We went out to the garden and sat silently side by side. Emotions indescribable in words swirled within us. "Samantha," Emily said quietly, "what should we do now?" I let out a deep breath. "Honestly, I don't know, but there's one thing I'm sure of." "What?" "That we have each other." Emily gave a small smile and squeezed my hand. At that moment, I felt that we truly became sisters, not just by blood, but connected by heart, and we were ready to step into a new life together. In the weeks following the revelation, our home was like a quiet storm. On the surface, daily life continued, but underneath, significant changes were occurring. Emily and I began to spend more time together than ever before. We talked about aspects of our lives we had never known, unraveling years of misunderstanding. "Samantha," Emily said one day as she came into my room, "I want to see more of your paintings." I hesitated but showed her my sketchbook. She looked at each page intently with a serious expression. "This is amazing," Emily exclaimed. "Why didn't you show me sooner?" I shrugged. "I thought no one would be interested." Emily looked sad. "I'm sorry, I didn't notice your talent either." Her words warmed my heart. I felt like I had finally received the recognition I had longed for. Meanwhile, our relationship with our adoptive parents, James and Linda, remained complicated. They continued to act apologetic and repeatedly express their regrets. However, the wounds from years of being neglected were not easily healed. Especially me, I could not forgive them. The days of favoring Emily and disregarding me were not something I could forget overnight. One evening after dinner, James approached me. "Samantha, about your paintings," he hesitated. "Could I see your work, if you don't mind?" I was surprised but kept my composure. "Why are you interested in my paintings now?" James sighed deeply. "We made many mistakes. Overlooking your talent was one of them. I thought it might not be too late to start." I stared at him. I could see genuine regret in his eyes. However, my heart was still not healed. "I'll think about it," I said, and returned to my room. That night, I spent a long time confronting my feelings. Could I forgive James and Linda? Was it possible to build a new relationship with them? The answer was not easy to find. But there was one thing I was sure of. I would no longer live in someone's shadow. My life was mine to decide. The next day, I invited Emily to go out with me. Our destination was Caroline's house, our real mother's home. As we pressed the doorbell, we gripped each other's hands tightly. The door opened and Caroline appeared. Tears welled up in her eyes. "Samantha," Emily, she said with a trembling voice. "Thank you for coming." We silently hugged Caroline. At that moment, emotions beyond words enveloped us. It would take time to fill the years of emptiness. But this embrace felt like a promise of a new beginning. As we entered Caroline's house, we noticed that the walls were covered with paintings. She was an artist too. "When you were conceived," Caroline began with a shaky voice, "I was young and immature. I didn't think I could give you the best life." Emily and I listened quietly. Caroline talked about the background of her decision, her life afterward, and how she had continued to watch over us. "But my decision must have hurt you," she said, wiping away tears. "Especially you, Samantha. I'm sorry." I took a deep breath and said, "Caroline, no, Mom. Indeed, we've been hurt in many ways. But I'm grateful that you recognized my talent and told us the truth." Emily also nodded and added, "We have time now to get to know each other. It's okay to take it slow." Caroline's face showed relief, and she hugged us again. From that day, we began visiting Caroline regularly. We learned painting techniques from her, listened to stories of her life, and gradually deepened our bond. However, the relationship with James and Linda remained complicated. They tried to show their efforts, but the years had piled up, making it hard to simply resolve. One day, Linda knocked on my room door. "Samantha, can we talk?" Her voice was tinged with anxiety. I hesitated but opened the door. Linda entered and silently stared at my paintings for a while, then suddenly started crying. "I'm sorry, Samantha," she said tearfully. "I overlooked your talent, ignored your feelings. I was a terrible mother." I sat down beside her, confused but calm. "I wasn't perfect either," I said quietly. "But what matters is what we do from here." Linda looked at me and nodded slightly. "You're right. Can we start over?" However, I could not forgive her. Considering the long-standing lack of affection, forgiveness was not an option for me. The next day, I made a significant decision. I gathered James, Linda, and Emily and declared, "I think it's time for me to leave this house." After a moment of silence, James and Linda tried to persuade me, but my mind was made up. And a few days later, as I was leaving the house, I told Emily, "I'm going to art college." She responded, "You should pursue your talent. We will support your decision all the way," and hugged me excitedly. "Congratulations, big sister. You're going to be a fantastic artist." A few months later, I enrolled in art college and started living on my own. In the new environment of the campus, I began to fully express my talent. Emily went on to medical school and started her own path. My relationship with Caroline also deepened gradually, and she became an important part of our lives. One day, my artwork was exhibited at a university exhibition. To my surprise, Emily and Caroline came. Seeing them standing in front of my paintings and feeling moved warmed my heart. I felt deep down that this was my family. It may not be perfect, scars might remain, but this is our reality, and by accepting this reality and moving forward, I believe we can become stronger. Emily came next to me and took my hand. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" she whispered. I smiled and nodded. "Yes, we have. But the real beginning starts now.